I am able to access that brilliance when I am present in the moment of whatever it is I'm doing without judging myself or without projecting into a future moment, simply being here in this moment with myself, because I feel like in those moments is when I am connected to the very source of brilliance.
Welcome to the Black Gymnasts Olympic Dreams edition of the Resilience to Brilliance podcast, where you'll be inspired by the history and eye-opening accounts from Olympians who lived the dream. I'm your host, Kim Hamilton Anthony. Here we go. The Black Gymnasts Olympic Dreams edition of Resilience to Brilliance is a short podcast series dedicated to the young Black gymnasts and their families out there who have those Olympic dreams. In the 2024 Olympic trials, you will likely see more Black gymnasts competing at that level than ever before. So I thought I'd bring on some individuals who can provide encouragement and advice to these young athletes and their families on how to navigate this world of gymnastics while still embracing the skin they're in. And also those who can help us to learn a bit more about the history of Black gymnasts. And then there are those who can also share their own stories about resilience and what it took to achieve their own Olympic dreams. I'm your host, Kim Anthony, and I am so glad you're joining us. Betty Okino helped the U.S. to win the bronze team medal in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. She is celebrated as the first African-American, along with Dominique Dawes, to win an Olympic medal. A former professional dancer, Betty now brings her experience as a dancer and a gymnast to the U.S. national staff, where she works with Olympic athletes on their dance and artistry. Betty and I sat down for an enlightening conversation about gymnastics, race, and of course, where she found the resilience she needed to make her Olympic dream come true. Let's listen. Hi, Betty. Welcome to Resilience to Brilliance. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Kim. It's good to see you.
You as well.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. So let's jump into a little bit of your background. Now, you have a very interesting heritage, especially when you place it into this gymnastics setting. What did those formative years look like for you?
Okay, so first, my heritage, I'm half African, Ugandan, and half Romanian. And we know the history of gymnastics in Romania.
Yes.
So my initiation into even knowing about the sport of gymnastics came through my mom and came through stories of Nadia Comaneci, who is obviously a very famous Romanian gymnast. And so in Romania, when my mom was growing up, I mean, they're similar ages actually, but in Romania, when my mom was growing up, it wasn't like, fairy tale princess. It was Nadia. That was the ideal, right? The gymnast that brought honor to their country. So I heard those stories quite a bit as a child. Fast forward into beginning gymnastics in rural Illinois, where there wasn't actually any gymnastics gyms. And there was a dance studio that I became a part of because I loved to dance. And then there was a tumbling gym. They had gymnastics equipment, but they only taught tumbling. And so it was in the 80s, mid to late 80s, I was watching the Olympics. Again, so Olympics, gymnastics was on TV for World Championships and Olympics and maybe American Cup. And maybe they showed a U.S. championship, but maybe not, but it wasn't televised that often. So the only time you got to see gymnastics was really the Olympics. So I watched the 84 Olympics. I see Mary Lou Retton win for the U.S., and I became enamored by the sport and gymnastics and begged my mom to put me in gymnastics. So she put me in tumbling. I was already a dancer, so she put me in tumbling because that's what existed. And then I was like, tumbling is not gymnastics. I still want to do gymnastics.
Yeah, you need the bars, the beam, the vault.
The beam, yeah, like the equipment.
Yes.
Where's the equipment? Not just this strip. And the tumbling gym where I was doing tumbling had a set of bars, it had like a beam, it had a vault. And so my mom asked if we could use the space and rent it out. And the owner, Tony Kaza, was great friends of ours, and I guess saw potential maybe in me and said, sure, go ahead. You can teach her, you can use the space. So my mom started learning the routines for the entry level into the sport of gymnastics and teaching them to
Oh
me.
my goodness. So did she have a background in gymnastics other than watching Nadia?
She had a background in being a motivated and determined mom to help her daughter achieve, you figure it out, right? And so she went to like congresses and conferences and watched videos and started learning that way. And then there was she became close friends with a gymnastics gym that was about an hour away from where we lived, that we drove to, and they helped teach her how to spot me, and they had pits, and so then I could start learning things there, and then we'd take them back to our gym and then we'd work on it. And that's how I
Oh
started.
my goodness. How long did that last, the relationship with your mom being your coach?
My mom being my coach was about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, at which point in time we moved to a suburb of Chicago. And then I moved to a gym there called Illinois Gymnastics Institute, where my coach was Todd Gardner, and where I had real gymnastics, real
Uh-huh.
teammates. It wasn't just me.
Well, hats off to your mom for that long. Her baby is going to be a gymnast, and I don't care what I have to do. Oh, that's special.
I will figure it out. It was also a different time in the sport, though, where one, the difficulty level wasn't what it is today. I mean, just by nature, even the equipment. The equipment back then did not support the difficulty that the equipment today does. And it was a different sport. So it was the transition from being a dancer, because I could tumble as a dancer, because I was a competitive dancer. So I competed in all those dance nationals with my brother and my group, and I did lyrical jazz and regular jazz and tap and ballet and combination numbers. So all of those dance competitions you now see like on YouTube was what I was competing in. So I had some tumbling skill when I moved into gymnastics. So beam was easy to pick up. Floor, I could dance and I could tumble. So bars was the most challenging, and also vault because they were foreign.
So you talk about your dance and the fact that you have a move named after you, a triple turn on the balance beam, and you would hit that turn like nobody's business. And I'm just like, what? Incredible. So your dance background obviously has paid off in your gymnastics career, because when I look back at your tapes, I'm dating myself. I'm saying tapes. When I look back at your video, hey, don't laugh that hard now.
Oh my God, I know. There's tapes. There's tapes in my mom's garage somewhere still, tapes, because that's all we
Right?
had.
True. Yeah, those tapes. So when I look back at your gymnastics, it's so beautiful. And now you're actually helping the U.S. national team be as beautiful as you were as a gymnast, and provide artistry into the sport. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. What are you doing with them?
So I'm on the U.S. national coaching staff, and I work with all the levels from our elite developmental all the way to our national team athletes. And I work with them on dance elements, artistry, and execution when it comes to beam and when it comes to floor. So implementing artistry and a foundation of dance back into the sport, which is the direction the International Gymnastics Committee is trying to go, and how they have started changing the rules so that it can reflect a balance of artistry and athleticism, where they felt like it had tipped in a different
Right.
direction.
Now, how did it tip in the different direction? Was it just that people were throwing all these skills and not really thinking about the dance or artistry of it?
The FIG, who also now wants to move it back towards artistry, is the one who moved it toward in the direction that it went. The moment that they changed the scoring system for elite gymnastics into an endless scoring system. So you have a separate D score and E score, where before it was a 10-0. You're working on perfection, essentially, with a 10-0. You can only do so much difficulty. Now it's who does it the best and executes it with the greatest amount of, aesthetic and, pointed feet and straight lines and expression and performance, when it's from a 10-0, the same way that college is still from a 10-0. So it upholds that. notice the athletes are all doing difficult gymnastics, but it's who executes it the cleanest. Whereas in elite gymnastics, you can do endless amount of difficulty and no one can take away your difficulty. It is worth a value. So an A skill has a value, 1. A B skill has 2 tenths, 3, C, 3, and up the letters to infinite amount of tenths, which they're putting a cap on that as well. So with that, the execution, you'll notice, is much lower because you can get your score just from having difficulty. You still have to have a level of execution, but the higher your difficulty is, you're still going to win. And so when they changed that, they changed the direction, essentially, of difficulty.
You think about the level of difficulty and swinging back in the other direction towards artistry. Do you think that will level the playing field more? I just want to know why. Like, what's the why behind the code, swinging in that direction, but coming back?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if you have an answer for that.
I believe I do have a good insight into it, which is why I feel like I do have an answer. And yes, it does level the playing field. America breeds stronger athletes. You just notice that when you look around the different countries at the physique and the build of the different athletes. Our athletes outpower in strength. So the code of difficulty works in that way in our favor. Whereas, for all the different reasons why, who knows? We can go into that like infinitely, why we do breed, maybe, we have more. We have access to more food and nutrition and all the things that we simply have more than other countries do. And so then we have a stronger athlete. And as you introduce this other element of requiring more artistry and execution, and they change the values a little bit of the skills where they're not letting you go to a certain level of difficulty, it does level the playing field. It allows for a different type of athlete that isn't necessarily going to do that high level of difficulty on the power events to also have an opportunity to win a medal.
That's a great answer. Interesting. So you are celebrated as the first African American, along with Dominique Dawes, to win an Olympic medal. What does that mean to you?
Well, what it means now as I reflect on it, it put into motion an idea of another possibility. I think, because since then, I've had a lot of parents and even young people that were, teenagers during that time and not in this country, in other countries, like watching the Olympics on a very tiny TV on their beach in, where was it? St. Lucia, somewhere like that. But I had someone reach out to me and he was like, we'd never seen anybody that looks like us on the television before doing gymnastics, but we were always tumbling on the beach and loved doing it, but didn't know that there was like a future, like an opportunity to do something beyond tumbling on this beach until we saw you. And it was the same with parents putting their kids into the sport of gymnastics. Like, we didn't see that as like a viable avenue for our child. Gymnastics, you would look towards the other sports perhaps, but not necessarily gymnastics until, you see that.
Exactly.
You see that example. And so that's what that meant to me.
And I'm sure at the time you had no idea that you were going to impact the world the way you did.
No idea. No idea.
Now, everyone's story is different, and I don't want to make assumptions that everyone has certain experiences based on the color of their skin, but I do want to ask you if there were any experiences or feelings that you had being a Black gymnast in a world where most of your teammates, if not all of your teammates, didn't look like you. Were there any things that you experienced that maybe your teammates or your coaches would never have understood?
Absolutely. And maybe, I don't know if it's isolated to America because of our racial history. Anywhere I would travel, I would notice people just looked at me differently. And because I look different, because of the color of my skin, they would want to touch my hair because I don't know, they've never seen curly, kinky hair. And so, things like that, like my teammates didn't have their hair touched. People weren't walking up to them to, feel their hair necessarily, where they would do that with me. And I don't think it was understood as why is that in any way? Why does that make you feel anyway? Why does that make you feel in any way singled out or different or just uncomfortable? Like that part I don't think is necessarily understood. I had the great benefit though of, like I said, my mom was my first coach, so it was only me. But when I went to competitions, I obviously looked different. And she would always say, people are just looking at you like that because you're
Oh,
beautiful. This is what she would say to me. They're just looking at you because you're beautiful. So just never mind them. And of course it happened all the time because my mother is white and I look black. And so when we would walk into restaurants, people would just stare at us all the time. Like, what's happening here? And that was what her response was to me. That being said, I moved from there to a gym in the suburb of Chicago where I had diversity, complete diversity. So my closest friends and my closest teammates they were Italian, they were black, they were
mm-hmm.
Jamaican, they were Irish, and we were a big group and we had lots of fun. So during that time in the sport, I felt very much at home. They understood the dilemma of the hair when my head would get all sweaty and then it would get chalky and then it would just grow into this like unmanaged
Oh.
situation. And it was embarrassing because I was trying to make myself look like the girls that I saw on TV and nobody looked like me. And so tried to make my hair like theirs and just didn't, that wasn't me. So it just didn't work.
What does that do to an athlete or anyone, really?
I think it can be very isolating. It can feel very isolating, especially when you feel like there's that you're not being understood, or also that your feelings aren't necessarily valid because it's not like it might not be outright like it's easier to validate that sort of feeling with an outright attack than it is with sort of like a passive aggressive, a passive racism rather than an aggressive racism.
I think about all of the little girls. I was one of those little girls. I was trying to make my hair look like everyone else's, and it just wasn't working. And you try so hard to fit in as a young girl, right? And you want to
Mm-hmm.
look as much like everybody else as possible because you think that's one less way that I'm different. Speak to the little girl who maybe she has her hair in braids. Maybe she is wearing her hair natural and she has an afro or she has little puffs. Or speak to her in terms of how she can handle the comments, the touching of the hair or the attempts to touch the hair.
Well, how I would have done things differently had I the wisdom that I do now. And I mean, the most important thing I can say is fall in love with you and begin embracing what is unique and beautiful about you. It wasn't until I stopped trying to be like other people, and then I started turning inward into, well, what are my strengths? What makes me unique and what makes me beautiful? What are the differences about me that make me beautiful? How can I lean into those things and start cultivating those? And as I started doing that, even with my gymnastics, because I wasn't the powerful gymnast, but my strength did come from the background of dance. I did have like a long, lean body. So bars came easily to me with the swing. My hair is kinky and curly. So how am I going to use that and make that work for me and into my own unique style and my own look? Um, and so that is what I would send the direction of all your energy to a young person inward, into that soul, into that being. And then the outer world won't affect you in the same way anymore. It just sort of blows off. And insofar as people touching your hair, if you don't want that to happen, then I'd rather you not touch my hair. it's a simple enough comment. And if it's, it's just so cool, it looks so cool, and I want to touch it. Thank you. I appreciate that. It looks
Hmm.
so cool.
It's okay to set that boundary and say, hey, you can look at it all you want, but
You can look at it and admire it. I think it's pretty cool
right.
too.
Uh-huh.
You know, just own it and embrace it. But I would say embrace your uniqueness, because that diversity and that uniqueness is what the world needs. It's what gymnastics needs and wants. Not for everybody to look the same or for you to fit this mold. We don't
Oh,
want that.
beautifully said. And as you think about that talented pool of gymnasts who are vying to make the 2024 Olympics, the appearance of the group is a lot more diverse than it has been in past years, especially when you were competing and when I was competing in
Mm.
84 trials. What challenges might the African American gymnast have as they're trying out for the Olympics that others may not experience?
Today, in this day, I don't know that I can necessarily say, and again, I could be wrong, that there would be there would be a difference in the challenge being experienced by the African American, the Asian, the Indian, or the white, or whatever race of athlete is competing. I don't think there's that division doesn't exist in the same way anymore with regards to elite gymnastics and vying for a position in the way that it maybe did in the past with regard to, you notice that maybe a difference in scoring, right? Because there wasn't the same aesthetic or ideal that once existed where, you have this lean European look, small, lean, white, bouncy ponytail or bouncy bob cut. It was just like the look. It was the look, and they all had the same thing. And I felt the judging was much more subjective in that direction. Whereas now, and that you can see that just in the result of our, last US championships and our last world championships, the podium was all black and brown, 1, 2, and 3, all around. So it's evidence that there's no longer a division in the way we judge elite gymnastics. So with regard to our African American athletes vying for the Olympic team, I feel like the playing field is even. It's purely based on talent, ability, consistency, and their history and
The day.
the day.
So, what that makes me think about is one of the things you said was you don't feel like the judges are being discriminatory, maybe, or biased the way they used to years ago. One of the things that I heard about is how Jordan Childs was encouraged to change her floor music. And some people say that it was because of racism and, everyone has their different opinions. Why do you think the music was changed? Especially coming from the standpoint of being a choreographer and helping in the artistry of it all.
Right. I have no idea because I found out about that as everybody else
Okay.
found out about it on a post on social media. Because again, me working with them and with her, that was never a discussion that was had regarding music being changed. So that's a decision that her and her coach came to, and I'm not exactly sure how they came to that decision because I fully favored that last routine, and she knew that. Yeah, we talked about it and we discussed it and how to make the performance of it translate into elite gymnastics from collegiate gymnastics, and how it was important that she brings her style to it still, that she doesn't like eliminate that, because again, that's going to be part of her unique performance, and we're looking for performance of character in a floor routine as well. That's literally one of the artistry deductions. And in order to do that, you have to feel it. You have to bring your own authentic self. You can't perform a character that doesn't match you because it's not going to translate. So that was a very important part of that performance and that specific floor routine. So with regard to it changing, it was news to me. Other than, I simply assumed that it's a new year. She wanted to get a new floor routine because she had already competed that at the world level. And our athletes normally do. They're not going to compete the same floor routine in the Olympics that they competed last year at World Championships or Pan Am
Right.
Games.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because for those who are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast who look like Jordan Childs, they may get the idea that they can no longer express their unique styles the way you were talking about. And what you just said was the complete opposite. Is you were helping her, and you were enjoying the fact that she's expressing her personality and that it was different. So that I hope people hear that, because that is so important, Betty. It really is.
I hope so too. That's my primary work when I'm working with their coaches and the athletes at our national training camps is finding that unique expression within their floor routine. And if it doesn't exist there, then we're going to find you some different music that you do connect with and you do feel, because you can't fake that. I mean, until you develop a certain level of acting skills, which we're not here to be actors, but we do need you to perform. Right. You can't fake it. So let's find something that's real and true and authentic to you and make the movements work. And that's what we're looking for. Absolutely. You have to be unique. You have to be true to yourself in your performance, whatever that is.
Well, the name of the podcast is Resilience to Brilliance. And we've seen your brilliance in the Olympics, in your gymnastics career, as an actor, now as a choreographer. Is there a story of resilience that you would like to share that could encourage those out there who are trying out for the Olympics, or maybe they're wanting to be a collegiate athlete?
Resilience, right? Latin for bounce back or rebound, essentially, recoil. And so one story that comes to mind, because in all stories of resilience, there's the moment of choice. So to bounce back, you either fall and stay down, but resilience, bounce back, means you're choosing to get back up. So you keep bouncing back. So I've noticed, as I was thinking about this moments in my life, I feel like I always know the moment of choice. So before the Olympics, before US Championships, the year of the Olympics, so US Championships trials are the competitions that lead up to being selected for the Olympic team, I broke my back and I was landing a dismount and I fractured it. And I remember the moment of, that moment of, oh crap, because it was literally a week before US Championships. This is it. And so, you go to the doctor and the doctor does the x-rays and the MRIs, and it's like, this is the situation. Your back is fractured. You need to be off of it for 6 weeks. No moving, complete brace. Well, we leave for the Olympics in 6 weeks. What, and essentially my question to him was, can I hurt myself further if I continue going? And he said could be a 1% chance of paralysis if, you do this and this happens. And in that moment, essentially my brain said, okay, so you're saying there's a chance. And from that moment on, I had decided that I am going to keep stepping in the direction of this dream. I am not done. And it went from everything just all possibility and opportunity left to possibility is back. And it didn't matter what the end result was, but it mattered that, okay, what can I do today? So me and my trainer came up with a plan. Okay, so I needed to have the brace on for a week, but you can do this. So you know that if you visualize your routines in your mind, it fires through the neurons and it fires through all your muscles in your body as if you're actually doing the routine. Your body will sweat. It'll work the same way. You'll fire the same muscles. So I went into a visualization routine. So as my teammates had 6 beam routines they did, I had 6 beam routines that I visualized, but I visualized all of them on the podium at the Olympics. Vault, I visualized as many vaults as they did. Bars, I visualized as many bar routines. And then we went into doing activities in the pool, but it became about this day-to-day and moment-to-moment process of moving in that direction and doing what I could do until I finally came to an end result, which had me at the Olympics.
Wow. So where were you able to find the ability to bounce back again? Especially, I'm sure you were in quite a bit of pain
Hmm.
and you have a 1% chance of paralysis.
Hmm. Hmm.
Where did you get that? Is that just something that you were born with, the ability to just be resilient?
I feel that everybody has it, existence. It is within it's the seed within every single one of us. We simply have to need the knowledge of that choice. For me, however, I have a very, very strong faith, and my grandmother instilled that in me. So the moment I experience, uh, I had a habit of prayer. I turn it to God. The moment I experience difficulty or pain or something that I can't compute or understand, or I need strength, I always turned to prayer and to faith. So that combined with having certain tools in place, which was the power of my own visualization, the tools of knowing that once my mind has decided something, my body's going to move in the direction of that decision. And so applying the combination of faith and those tools acting in one instant is what created the bounce back. And so the moment that you make the decision, you have now started the recoil process.
That's good, Betty. Ooh, that is good. When making an Olympic team or competing at a high level and you just want to win, there is always an opportunity to be in a situation where perhaps a coach may use some unhealthy training tactics. And you hear in gymnastics the word abuse in different settings all the time. So, how do you counsel a parent? Your mom coached you. How do you counsel a parent who has an athlete in that situation, not in an abusive situation, but has an athlete competing in the sport of gymnastics? How do you counsel them to coach their athlete to avoid such abuse? What does a parent tell their son or daughter?
I think it's important to understand the and to know internally the difference, because there's a certain amount of push past comfort that is required to be elite at anything. I mean that's the nature of even trying to grow muscles. If you're trying to lift or build anything, you have to push past that comfort level in order for growth to start happening. There needs to be a little bit of that, and so I think it's important to have those discussions and to understand like what is that point where you just you're uncomfortable and you don't want to push yourself any further, but you need somebody to help you do that. And when is it now destructive? It's damaging. You're doing too much. It's too much. It's not past the point of discomfort. Now it's just repeated. It's repetitive. It's pounding, and it's not no longer helping. I think that's an important discussion for each person individually and with their parents, because we all have a different threshold and we all have a different limit, but it's important to understand that. I feel like there's a generation of young people that hit a level of discomfort or challenge and they want to just give up, or like maybe that's just not, I can maybe just go this route instead to attempt to get to that goal. But you can't, you're gonna have to push through. You're gonna have to walk through the fire at some point. Um, and understanding the difference between walking through the fire and burning in
Mm.
it.
So having that awareness and having conversations with your parents is one of those.
Yeah.
If the child and the parent aren't having those open conversations, then it's not going to work, right?
No, and there's no way to know unless you're actually communicating and having a conversation. I feel it's also important for the child to know, because we do experience this sometimes where the drive of the parent is a little bit greater than the
Mm.
drive and the will of the child. So then it creates a difficulty. The child doesn't want to necessarily have that conversation with their parent because they don't want to let them down, because the parent might have a different idea also of what, working to a certain level or pushing through means than what the child feels and experiences. So it's very individual, and it needs to be very open. And the drive to do the thing requires to be the child's vision and goal. And I know how challenging that can be. Like there can be where you're so invested in your child, there's a point where it kind of crosses, like their dream now becomes your dream, because you want to help them reach that. And if you're a parent who's, been a competitive athlete also at a high level, or anything at a high level, then one's own urge is going to kick in to, come on,
you can do this.
You just keep pushing through it. You can do this.
Suck it up. Come on. Yeah. No,
yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, they're like, it actually physically hurts. It's not like me being sore because I'm building, but I'm actually in pain. Okay, so now we have a different conversation. This is a different conversation. You don't continue to push. You back off a little bit. Like, I have that conversation often with athletes. Like, especially the younger developing athletes, can you tell the difference between pain and like soreness, the soreness of growth and the pain of injury?
That's really good. I never had that conversation with yeah, it just didn't happen back in my day.
No, I think back in our day, it was you push past everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. And if you can't, then go off to the side until you can again, or don't.
Yes. Or someone else will, and they will take your place.
Or someone else will, and they will take your place. Exactly. So you just did.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's good. I think that open communication is so important, and creating a safe environment for your child to be able to come to you with whatever's happening in the gym that they may feel uncomfortable with. Good stuff. Good stuff. So one of the things I've heard you talk about is winning the bronze medal at the 1992 Olympics, and how the media and other people had a response that was not a positive one, especially for you all who did the work to get there. Tell me about how that affected you.
It's interesting because we were pretty happy, like backstage before we walked out to get it was mixed. It was mixed. We definitely wanted at least the silver medal. Gold would have been fantastic. That's what you're like competing towards. But we were happy that we pulled it together, and we earned, to some degree, a bronze medal.
Wait. To some degree?
To some degree, because there was mixed, not that we earned it to some degree, but the happiness was to some degree, because there was mixed emotions backstage. There was some that were crying because it wasn't a silver or a gold. And then there was some of us that were like trying to bolster everybody up and saying, come on, guys, like, we fought for this, and we earned this. This is how it laid out today. But we are on the podium, we have a medal, and they're going to put up the flag. So moving from that into going into, we thought it was going to be a little bit of a celebration, like, yay, medal number 1 for Team USA. Let's keep moving from this. And instead it was, wah, wah. The questions were more like, so you guys lost the silver medal by this much. I mean, how does it feel that you guys ended up with a bronze? How does it feel to be to have gotten third place, where at Worlds you guys were, in second place? You were favored to be vying for the gold.
This is right after competition.
Right after, in the press conference.
So that had to.
And it was fascinating, because I thought, wow. I mean, it wasn't until the question was asked that, like, in my head, I thought, I
hadn't thought of that.
I hadn't considered that this is how we're perceiving this experience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so it definitely colored it. It colored it for our whole team for years after that. Whenever we like talk about it or even have conversations, it's kind of like, it's not a conversation of victory. Like, we did something great. It was more like a defeat.
But in fact, you did do something great. And you made history for the
Mhm.
US, which is, it's mind-boggling to me. I wasn't there, Betty, but when you described the questions that they asked and the way they asked them after the meet, it hurts my heart. So I can't even imagine having gone through the grueling training all those years to get there and to have somebody downplay what you accomplished.
Yeah, it was.
Makes me mad, honestly.
I would love to say that that would never happen again, but the same questions are being fired at these athletes as soon as they step off the podium.
Exactly. Unfortunately. And I wonder if those people who are asking those questions have been elite athletes before.
No,
And perhaps that's why they think it's okay to ask, because they don't
of course.
understand the pain that causes an athlete, and they don't understand the work and the sacrifice that goes into accomplishing what they do out there every single day.
And they don't understand that the victory is not only in this one moment that you guys are watching right here. It's in that this whole journey that led to this, and whether or not the result is a bronze medal, a sixth place finish, or a gold medal, it doesn't take away from the athlete's journey. That's the victory, like the struggle, the journey that it took to get to that
Mm-hmm.
point, regardless of the result. They're a champion.
Yes, absolutely. I remember being at an event like a year ago, and someone asked me, "Hey, did you make an Olympic team?" And I said, "No, I didn't make an Olympic team." And he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like it was the end of the world. And I'm like, "Oh my goodness."
Like,
I
I'm actually good. I've had a really great life. Let me tell you about what my experiences were. I mean,
But he just felt like it was the end of the world for me, and I must be the saddest person in the world because that didn't happen for me. But the truth is, there are not very many people who will make an Olympic team. So I think about the athlete who's out there, and there's nothing wrong with that goal, of course. It's a wonderful goal. You should always go for, as far as you can get. But what do you say to those athletes and those parents who have those Olympic goals and they may not realize them? Is there more to gymnastics than making an Olympic team?
oh my gosh, there's so much more. It's so fascinating because especially every 4 years, right around the Olympics, the conversation comes back up, and I'm having discussions and conversations again about the Olympics. But it feels like another lifetime, truly, for me. It was an experience that I had another lifetime ago, and I have to go back into that like life and world. But I mean, so much life has happened since then, and has happened around that, and happens up into that moment where it's an experience. It's an experience. It's a blink, and it's an experience in the sea of millions of other experiences that we have and are going to have in life. And yes, it's important to have the target, or else the arrow that you shoot doesn't have anything to hit. And in the journey between shooting and hitting that target, that arrow travels a long distance and through a lot of space and a lot of different experiences. And the target is just but a blink. It gives you a trajectory, it gives you a point of focus, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's your destination. The destination is nowhere. It continues. Like there is no final. And that's what I realized from even being there at the Olympics. Like as I was standing there, me and my teammate, after like we had finished all around and we'd finished event finals, and it was just the two of us on the floor. Everybody had dispersed. You're so used to everyone being around you all the time, like ushering you here, ushering you there, and never leaving you alone. But literally, like it was like cockroaches. Everybody scattered as soon as like it finished, and we're like, we're okay. We were just standing there taking selfies of ourselves with the mascot on the gym floor. And then we looked at each other for a moment and we're like, that's it. Huh. All that.
Oh,
That's kind of what it felt
wow.
like. All that.
Wow.
And so it was my first like moment of like perspective and realizing that all of this was for the journey, all of the experiences that I had up until this moment. And it's not the beginning or the end of the world. It's simply a point of, it's a direction. It's pointing you in a direction that you are meant to move in to get to the next experience.
Absolutely. And the things that you learn, the skills, the tenacity you take with you.
Absolutely. I feel like that's probably the most unique thing about gymnastics. And it might be every single sport, but this is what I've lived and been involved in my whole life. But the amount of the determination, and I feel like resilience is a built into gymnastics, and maybe it is a built into sport, but it's the nature of learning anything in this sport, right? From learning a kip to learning any skill, you're gonna fall, you're gonna fall, you're gonna get back up, you're gonna fall, you're gonna get back up, you're gonna fall, you're gonna get back up, and eventually you're not gonna fall anymore. And then next, what do you do? So, I mean, and it develops that sort of, that way of being. It develops that body habit that we can bring then to life. What do you do when you fall? You get back up, try it again, and you learn from it. Maybe you're going to do something a little bit differently this time. Okay, try it again.
We talked about your work with the U.S. national team as a choreographer, helping to bring that artistry in. But the person listening does not have to be on the U.S. national team in order to work with you, because you have
Correct.
dance for gymnastics classes and clinics. How can someone get involved with that?
So I started a subscription dance for gymnastics program, and it's online, and it's video courses that take you from the beginning stages of what you would require dance applied to gymnastics all the way to the more advanced stages. And they're 30-minute classes, so anybody could actually do them, from the beginner gymnast to the more advanced gymnast. And they teach anything from basic ballet technique that would be required for gymnastics, to turn drills, to flexibility, to developing our active flexibility using some Pilates. And there's, of course, fun dances in different styles. So you have lyrical jazz, you have some hip hop, you have jazz funk, and different choreographed routines that you can then learn, and warm ups and different things like that. And that is now becoming an app, which we're launching in April.
Really? April of 2024.
Correct. April of 2024, the DFG app, and it's going to present slightly differently, only because we've observed the different way that learning happens now with young
Okay.
people, and it needs to happen in quick, intimate bursts. They need to be challenged. So all of the different classes, if you will, are instead challenges and not classes. So it's a 10-minute choreography challenge, and that's broken down into 3 parts. Can you learn this? Go. And then I teach it. Or it's a quick ballet footwork combination. Can you learn this? And this is what you're going to be focusing on. And so then we're using that platform as a way to, one, educate on movement and balance. And it's not just dance for gymnastics, but it can be applied to all sports. Technique, but also all of those beneficial elements of dancing. The dopamine that is created when you dance to music and you move together, and and the feeling that comes out of it at the end. So we're trying to bring a mindset element as well as a movement element. And for young people, but the next generation of it, which will launch in 6 months, will be for the parents
Okay.
as well.
Ooh, I'm excited about that. I might just have to get the app and kind of start over myself. Check it
Yes,
out. Check it out.
yes,
See what it's like.
yes,
So
yes.
how can they find you?
Go to danceforgymnastics.com to access the app and the subscription program, and to access clinics for your gym.
Wonderful. Now, Betty, there's a question that I ask everyone at the end of my podcasts, And the question is, what does brilliance mode look like for you? And I'll define brilliance mode for you. It's basically when you are operating out of the fullness of who you were designed to be. You're using your gifts, your talents, your interests, those things that make your heart sing, those things that you're passionate about. I call that brilliance mode. So, Betty, what does living in brilliance mode look like for you?
Living in brilliance mode. For me, I feel like when I am able to access that brilliance when I am present in the moment of whatever it is I'm doing. So without judging myself or without projecting into a future moment, simply being here in this moment with myself or whoever I'm with, doing whatever I'm doing. Because I feel like in those moments is when I am connected to the very source of brilliance. And that's what I try to help our athletes do. Those are the moments when you experience the zone in sports. If you do any amount of research on people who have been and experienced the zone, and I've experienced it once, and it was when I was doing, it was an exhibition actually, and it was in Holland, and it was somewhere in 91, I think maybe. And I was doing a beam routine in this exhibition, and I completely it felt so easy and effortless and present as if I was watching myself do the routine, and I didn't have to think about it or worry about it. And everything I did was flawless all the way to the landing. And it was the most like magical sort of experience. And it is where that, that level of that preparation, and presence in the moment. And then when we're in that moment, there's like a surrender. And in that, and this is the place where I try to access as much as I can on a daily basis, because that is when I feel brilliance comes through me into the world. Does that answer that
That
question?
answers that question. Oh, does it? Yes, absolutely. It does. I might have to listen to that again and just feel it. So the presence. Oh, yes, presence.
Presence. I feel like that's probably our biggest challenge.
Because I don't know about you, when I would compete, even if I was standing on that first place on the podium, I would still be thinking about next week. Can I do this again? And I wouldn't enjoy that moment. So I love that brilliance mode for you is being present in whatever it is you're doing. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more about Betty Okino, check out our show notes on inbrilliancemode.com/podcast. And to connect with Betty on Instagram, follow her at Betty Okino. If you've enjoyed this episode of Resilience to Brilliance, please share it with others who may be encouraged by it. And to make sure you don't miss future episodes, please follow us or subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow me on Instagram at RealKimAnthony. Any use of this podcast without the express written consent of Brilliance Mode, LLC is prohibited.